What would you think if a teacher, someone entrusted with nurturing young minds, stood before a classroom and humiliated a black boy? Not because he misbehaved, not because he lied, but simply because he dared to speak his truth. 11-year-old Malik Rivers was proud to share that his father was Vin Diesel, a man the world knew, but he knew as Dad. Yet instead of support, Malik was met with laughter, sneers, and disbelief. His teacher, Mrs. Bishop, coldly dismissed his words, reducing his identity to a punchline, all because his skin didn't match the image they had in mind. The class mocked him while the adults sat in insistent silence, leaving Malik alone in his truth. But when the truth came walking through the classroom door in the most unexpected way, the deep, quiet prejudice that had lingered beneath the surface was brought into the light. This is a story of unexpected courage and resilience, of a boy who dared to stand tall and the power of compassion to change hearts. The morning air in Greenville felt heavy and humid, weighed down by unspoken tensions. Malik stood at the curb, adjusting the straps of his backpack, while his mother, Tasha, knelt beside him, checking his shoelaces one last time. She didn't say much. Her eyes held the quiet worry that every mother carries when sending her child into unfamiliar spaces. "You're smart, you're kind, and you belong," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. Malik nodded, though deep inside, he wasn't sure he believed it. He had been the new kid before. Twice, in fact, but this place felt different. Their neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. The first day they arrived, an elderly white couple across the street paused mowing their lawn to stare. Another woman pulled her child inside without a wave or a smile. Not hateful, exactly, just suspicious, as if Malik and his mother had shown up in the wrong movie. As the school bus pulled up with a hiss and groan, Malik stepped on board, and the chatter inside died down, just enough for him to feel dozens of unfamiliar eyes upon him, sizing him up, measuring him silently before returning to their conversations. No one moved to make room. Slightly embarrassed, he took a seat near the back, pressed his bag to his chest, and stared out the window. Brookside Middle was clean, the kind of place with brightly colored banners reading character counts and tidy mulch around the flagpole. But as Malik walked down the hall toward his homeroom, he felt a coldness in the air, a chill that didn't come from air conditioning. He was greeted not with smiles, but with half glances and quick looks that assessed him before dismissing him entirely. In room 208, his homeroom teacher, Mrs. Bishop, stood beside the whiteboard, immersed in her attendance sheet. She glanced up when Malik entered, offering a tight-lipped smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. With her salt and pepper bob curling neatly under her ears, she looked sharp and ready for business. "Class," she announced, barely glancing at Malik again. "We have a new student." "It's Malik," he corrected softly, feeling the weight of the eyes upon him. "Right," she said with little enthusiasm. "From Atlanta. Find a seat, please." "Colin, scoot over," she barked at a blond boy by the window who didn't move until she raised her voice. With a reluctant sigh, Colin pushed his backpack aside, giving Malik a sideways glance. Malik sat quietly, folding his hands and focusing on breathing evenly. He tried his best to pay attention, to follow the lesson, and to raise his hand when he knew the answer. But each time he did, Mrs. Bishop would glance past him, never calling on him, not once. When he provided the correct answer during group work, she gave a tight nod, but didn't offer praise. Colin, on the other hand, received warm smiles and gentle corrections when he was wrong, along with full-throated praise for getting anything right. By lunch, Malik felt the divide so clearly that he didn't bother trying to talk to anyone. He walked slowly through the cafeteria, scanning the room for an open seat. But the moment he moved toward a table, kids would shift away, whisper, or suddenly pretend the space was taken. Eventually, he settled alone in the farthest corner, picking at his sandwich while laughter and clicks buzzed around him. He heard his name once, followed by snickers, but he didn't look up. The week dragged on, each day feeling like a rehearsal for invisibility. Malik didn't want to cause trouble or be labeled, but he couldn't stop the ache inside him when his mom asked how his day went. He always said, "Fine," and escaped to his room. She didn't press. Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't. But one thing she always said echoed in his heart: "Don't ever let the world convince you you're smaller than you are." Then one Monday morning, Mrs. Bishop stood at the front of the class and announced something new. "Next Friday will be our annual Career Hero Day. Each of you will prepare a short presentation about someone in your family, ideally a parent or grandparent, and tell us what they do and why they inspire you." The room came alive with chatter. "My mom's a nurse," one student said. "My dad builds houses," another chimed in. "My aunt's a pilot," someone else exclaimed. Malik sat up straighter for the first time since arriving because he already knew what he was going to say. That night, in the corner of the bedroom they barely had time to decorate, Malik pulled out a worn shoebox filled with keepsakes. Inside were birthday cards, a faded letter, and a single photograph, the one he wasn't supposed to show around. In it, a younger Vin Diesel, real name Mark Sinclair, held a swaddled baby in his arms. His hand rested protectively on the child's back, and the smile on his face wasn't for a camera. It was for his son. Malik stared at the picture, his fingers brushing over the glossy surface. His mother had told him the truth years ago. The world-famous actor had once been part of her life, part of his, before fame pulled him into shadows where secrets became necessary. There were no headlines, no public claims, but there were phone calls, letters, and visits that stopped once tabloids began sniffing. Still, he remembered the deep, kind voice telling him, "You're stronger than people know." All week, Malik worked on his speech. He wrote and rewrote, practiced in the mirror, and tried to make his voice steady and his words clear. "My dad's name is Mark Sinclair, but the world knows him as Vin Diesel. He's my hero because even when he became famous, he didn't forget me. He told me to be proud, to stand tall, and to never be ashamed of who I am." His mother watched him quietly from the hallway, a soft sadness in her eyes. She never discouraged him, but never encouraged him either. "Just tell the truth, but be ready if they don't believe it," she advised. On Thursday, the day before the presentations, Malik carefully placed the photo into a plastic sleeve and tucked it into his folder. At recess, while the other kids played, he stayed behind to review his notes. That's when Colin and two of his friends approached. "So, who are you going to say your dad is tomorrow? LeBron? Obama?" Colin said loudly enough for others to hear. Malik looked up and replied calmly, "Vin Diesel." For a moment, there was silence. Then came the laughter, not just from Colin and his friends, but from a few kids nearby who had heard. Colin grinned, like he'd been handed a gift. "Vin Diesel? You're joking, right? Look at you." He laughed harder. "He's white. You're like the exact opposite." One boy chided, "Maybe your mom wishes he was your dad." Malik felt the heat rise in his ears. He clenched his fists but said nothing. His heart pounded, not with anger, but with shame. He didn't deserve this. When they walked away, still laughing, he pulled the photo out from his folder and stared at it again. The smile on his father's face was still there, just like before, but now it felt distant, fragile, like something too rare for the world around him to accept. For the first time, he wondered if telling the truth was worth the pain it always brought. The next day, Friday morning, arrived thick with tension. The sky outside his window remained a dull gray, clouds hanging low as if even the weather was holding its breath. He dressed carefully, smoothing the wrinkles from the button-up shirt his mom had ironed the night before. He checked his backpack 3 times to make sure the photo was still there, carefully tucked inside its plastic sleeve. Standing in front of the mirror, he repeated his lines one more time, telling himself this would be the day everything changed. On the school bus, the usual hush followed him as he stepped on. Whispers flitted from row to row. Glances shot his way. Somewhere near the front, someone muttered, "Hollywood faker," under their breath. Malik clenched his jaw but didn't react. Today, he had proof. Today, the truth would speak louder than skin color. Walking into room 208, Mrs. Bishop was already arranging the order of presentations. Her eyes barely acknowledged him, cold and indifferent as always. He sat quietly near the window, trying to steady his breathing. One by one, his classmates went up to the front of the room. A girl spoke proudly about her mom, a local dentist. Another boy beamed while sharing how his dad worked in construction. Colin strutted up next, his tone loud and confident as he detailed his father's glory as head coach of Greenville High's football team. The class clapped enthusiastically. Mrs. Bishop smiled at him like he was her own grandson. Then came Malik's turn. He stood up, legs trembling slightly as he walked slowly to the front, his heart pounding in his ears, yet his hands didn't shake. He placed the photo carefully on Mrs. Bishop's desk next to the notes he had written. A few kids snickered, and Colin leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Malik took a deep breath. "My name is Malik Rivers, and my hero is my dad, Mark Sinclair, but you probably know him as Vin Diesel." The class didn't wait. Laughter erupted instantly, loud, merciless, unfiltered. Malik froze. "Colin, stop!" he half shouted, frustration bubbling. "Come on, do you even own a mirror?" Colin gasped through laughter. "Vin Diesel? Bro, are you kidding me?" Malik opened his mouth to push through, but Mrs. Bishop raised a hand to silence the room. The laughter quieted, but the smirks remained. She looked at Malik, her expression unreadable. With a sigh that conveyed far more than her words ever could, she said, "Malik, let's not turn this into a fantasy exercise. Career Hero Day is about real people in your life, not celebrities you see on TV." Malik's face turned pale. His voice faltered. "But he is my dad." "That's enough," she cut him off, her voice sharp and final. "You're not here to play pretend. Sit down." No one said anything after that. There was no laughter left, only an awkward silence so heavy it felt suffocating. Malik picked up his photo with trembling hands and walked back to his seat. No one met his eyes, not even the ones who had laughed the hardest. But the damage was done. His name had become a punchline, and worse, his truth had been denied. Not by his peers, but by the adult who was supposed to protect him. After class, as kids poured into the hallway, Colin walked by Malik and muttered just loud enough to be heard, "Maybe next time, pick someone more believable," then laughed as he walked away, disappearing down the corridor. Malik didn't go to lunch. He sat in the library, hunched over an empty notebook, staring at the photograph like it was written in another language no one in this town could read. He didn't cry. He didn't move when the final bell rang. He walked home in silence, barely hearing the cars that passed him. His mother was in the kitchen when he got home, chopping onions while music played low on the radio. She turned when he walked in, immediately seeing the look on his face. He didn't speak. He just handed her the crumpled speech and the photo before turning and walking to his room. That night, after he'd gone to bed, Tasha sat at the kitchen table, reading every word he had written. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she opened the old shoebox again. Inside were more than just memories. There were truths the world refused to believe. She stared at the photo and then picked up her phone, dialing a number she had stored for years but never used. It rang twice. Then a voice answered, "Hello? Mark, it's Tasha." A pause. "Is he okay?" "No," she said, her voice calm but tight. They called him a liar, his teacher, the kids, all because he told the truth. A longer silence stretched between them. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said finally. "Tell him he did the right thing." The next morning, Malik said nothing on the way to school. He walked through the halls as if invisible. No one laughed now. Maybe the shame of watching someone be publicly humiliated had silenced them, or maybe they thought the joke had already run its course. Either way, they didn't look him in the eye. During homeroom, Mrs. Bishop acted like nothing had happened. She didn't mention the previous day. She didn't acknowledge the damage she had done. She simply passed out worksheets and returned to her desk, going about business as usual. But Malik knew better. Something inside him had shifted. The part of him that once believed adults always told the truth had cracked open, and what spilled out was not anger, but clarity. At 9:17 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Mrs. Bishop, mid-sentence, looked up, surprised. The door opened slowly, and a tall man in a dark gray hoodie and jeans stepped inside. The room went completely still. The kids stared. Some gasped. It was him. Vin Diesel didn't speak right away. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning faces until they settled on Malik, who was sitting frozen in his seat, lips slightly parted in disbelief. The man smiled softly and walked to the front of the class. "I believe," he said in a voice calm but commanding, "there's been some confusion." Mrs. Bishop stood up, blinking rapidly. "Mr. Diesel, I didn't expect—" "No," he said, turning to her. "I imagine you didn't. Because you didn't believe him. Because my son doesn't look like me. Because in your mind, the color of his skin made his truth impossible." She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The room was silent, not just with shock, but with something heavier. Guilt, recognition, a slow, painful awareness. Vin looked back at Malik. "You didn't lie," he said softly. "You told your story, and you should never be ashamed of that." He turned to the class. "This young man is my son, not because he looks like me, not because of fame, but because he is mine. And the truth doesn't need permission to be spoken." Students sat with wide eyes, not daring to laugh now. Mrs. Bishop lowered her head, lips trembling. The weight of her own prejudice settled on her shoulders, too heavy to ignore. The silence that followed Vin Diesel's words didn't just fill the room, it changed it. Students who had mocked Malik, who whispered behind his back and laughed in his face, now stared in stunned silence, their eyes filled with disbelief and discomfort. Colin's smirk slowly faded, replaced by a look of realization as he absorbed the moment unfolding before him. Malik felt a weight lift. His heart swelled with pride. He hadn't just stood up for himself. His father had backed him, and suddenly he felt validated. He wasn't just a punchline. He was a young man with a story worth telling. After Vin spoke, the room erupted into conversations. Not the careless mockery Malik had encountered before, but genuine discussions about identity, representation, and truth. For the first time, the students began to see Malik as more than just the new kid. He was Malik Rivers, the son of Vin Diesel. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Malik felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Vin kneeling beside him, a proud smile on his face. "You did good today, Malik. You showed people who you are. I'm proud of you." Tears filled Malik's eyes as he nodded, overwhelmed by the support and love radiating from his father. "I didn't know they would laugh, Dad. I didn't want to be made fun of for telling the truth." Vin shook his head gently. "Sometimes the truth will challenge people's perceptions. It's not easy, but remember your voice matters, and when the world tries to dim your light, you keep shining." In that moment, surrounded by supportive classmates, Malik realized that the truth he carried, far from being a burden, was a blessing, a unique piece of his identity that brought strength, connection, and understanding. As days turned to weeks, the atmosphere at Brookside Middle began to shift. Students sought Malik out, eager to hear his story, their perceptions altered by the unexpected encounter with the truth. A few weeks later, during a school assembly, Malik stood on stage with Vin by his side, sharing their journey. "It takes courage to speak your truth," he told the audience, "and it's important to listen. We all have our stories, and they matter, even if they don't fit the mold." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the walls, and for the first time, Malik felt a sense of belonging. In that moment of triumph, he understood that his journey was just beginning, and that he could face any challenge ahead with the strength of his truth. More than just a lesson in acceptance, Malik learned the importance of compassion and empathy. His experience opened doors to dialogues about race, identity, and belonging. Bishop became a firm advocate for diversity and representation in the classroom, fostering an atmosphere of understanding and connection among her students. In the months that followed, Malik continued to shine. He joined the school's drama club, where he discovered a love for acting that allowed him to express his experiences creatively. He became a voice for others who felt unheard, encouraging them to share their truths boldly. Meanwhile, Tasha stood proudly watching her son grow, constantly amazed by his resilience and determination. Their bond deepened as they navigated the complexities of life together. No matter where Malik's journey led him, he knew he would always carry the strength of his mother's wisdom and the support of his father's love. Years later, as Malik looked back at the events of that fateful day, he recognized it as a catalyst that shaped who he would become. The laughter that once stung turned into lessons of strength, humility, and courage. He was not just the son of a famous actor. He was Malik Rivers, a young man who dared to stand tall in his truth and inspired others to do the same. The world had its prejudices, but Malik learned that the light of truth could illuminate even the darkest corners, creating spaces where kindness and understanding thrived. And as he charted his own path, he carried with him the indelible mark of resilience, proof that no matter who they are or where they come from, everyone has a truth worth sharing, and it is in those truths that authentic connections are forged.